Hey everyone, welcome to the Wednesday edition here with Jim Coventry. I was going over the fantasy rankings, but more of the game previews pre-Thanksgiving. There is a separate, if I believe I was looking at the calendar correct, a separate Thanksgiving and Black Friday breakdown schedule. Is that with Alan that you do that, Jim?
I did that yesterday, so all those are
Perfect.
posted wherever you're watching now. You can find it back, go back to yesterday, but I broke down all three Thanksgiving games and the Black Friday game.
There we go. Okay, so I guess I want to make sure. Are we also discussing those games, or because you've already talked about Matt Nauseam, we're going to go through the Sunday and
We'll
Monday
just go,
games?
we'll do the Sunday, Monday slate since we got the other ones covered. Some people wanted to jump on that stuff early, and I kind of knew that.
This is good. We're learning on the fly here. I want to make sure that we have that because honestly, as a Packer fan, I am nervous about that Packers Dolphins game. The less we have to discuss about that, the better. So I can feel or pretend like I'm safe from a Packer fan. I'm going to that game, so that's partly why we're trying to get some of this content knocked out today. Looking forward to that one. The last time the Packers played on Thanksgiving was when Brett Favre was retired in the ring ceremony for the Packers. They lost to the Bears on a rainy Thursday night, Lambeau Field. I was at that game too. So was my dad. So hopefully the Bartle bad luck will not be affected for the Dolphins Packer game. That is neither here nor there right now. We're talking about the Sunday and Monday games.
But I will add one thing for those that didn't catch it. The weather should be a factor in terms of cold. It's going to be about 20 degrees. It's going to be a little bit of wind. So that wind chill is going to be in the teens probably. And Miami is coming. It's a warm weather team. Tua has somewhat of a history in cold weather games. That's not good.
0-7.
He has a pop gun for an arm, and it's not helping if it's cold. So, I like the Packers there. But I obviously, if you want the breakdown, that scroll back.
Sorry, I'm jumping. Tune to the other places to go do that. Yes. 0-7 Tua is in games under 40 degrees in weather. Last time the Packers and Dolphins played, that was when Tua suffered a concussion, I think in the beginning of the second half, and really has kind of spiraled to where we're at now. So part of me is kind of just nervous too that I don't want to see something like that occur again. But I think anytime you're watching the Dolphins, especially live, there is that stuff. So again, lots of different content really across the RotoWire YouTube network discussing those Thanksgiving and Black Friday games. If you're doing any of the pick'em entries or just doing a spread or pool with your friends and family for those four specific contests, we got you covered. RotoWire YouTube channel, Jim specifically, Jim Coventry NFL, getting you all set. I see a few start sit questions in the chat already too. A reminder to folks that Jim does a show 11 a.m. Eastern time and goes really up until kickoff, getting you set for all the start sit stuff that we have out there. Is that different this week though?
And we're doing one immediately after the show. Because of the 4 games on the holidays, I'm doing a special start in addition. So you're right. We do the Sunday at 11 Eastern, but we're doing today at 11 Eastern. So you got to start sit question. When we're done, I'll log off. I'll log back on, ask your questions.
That's great. And Clip Next already has some trade questions. Let's just save those as best we can for when Jim, directly after this podcast is done, or this show on the YouTube network, is set for some more content. So I'm going to get right into things. And we had a bit of breaking news when it comes to Daniel Jones. We'll get to them when we get to the Vikings a little bit later on. But starting first, the Chargers Falcons. Again, no teams on bye here for week 13. This one's in Atlanta. We just saw the Chargers get effectively shellacked, I felt like, by the Ravens on Monday night in Los Angeles. And you could directly see the offense fall off the second J.K. Dobbins was out of the lineup. Now, unfortunately, he's been diagnosed with a knee sprain, already out this week against the Falcons. The idea is that he's possibly out a little bit longer as well, too. I made the case in the Tuesday Waiver Wire podcast, you can listen to that yesterday or anywhere you listen to podcasts, that I would rather have Kamani Vidal, whereas I think everyone is just expecting Gus Edwards as the key pickup. Hassan Haskins was the guy last week. Reminder to everyone, if you're just looking at the box score, nothing else, they don't activate, they being the Chargers, don't activate Kamani Vidal when Haskins, Edwards, and Dobbins are all healthy. Haskins provides some special teams value. He was the third down pass catcher, but I think with Dobbins out, Vidal just does the Dobbins role, and Edwards remains the same. Is that crazy to say, though?
There's no dispute here, and I'm glad you're one of the people that get that, because people who look, they'd say Haskins, one carry, 45% of the snaps. He was in the Dobbins role, but he didn't carry the ball. Edwards saw the ball, but you are right. Vidal, it's a special teams thing. He will be elevated ahead of Haskins. So yes, like I said, it's a 1-2 punch. I'm not going to tell you who the lead is, but it's a 1-2 punch with Edwards and Vidal, and maybe it's close.
Yeah, and it's possible that offensively, this game at the over under 40.5, Vegas certainly thinks there's going to be offense. If that is the case, that goes kind of counter to what the Chargers want to do. So I almost think Vidal is the better fantasy play if Vegas is thinking the over-under is going to get close to that figure. Vegas makes money for a reason. They're not normally wrong about that stuff. So you could do a lot worse then Vidal, or I think Gus Edwards if you're in a pinch. Now again, no teams on bye. Theoretically, you're not in that spot, but I actually like Vidal quite a lot if you're in deeper leagues. From the Falcons side of things, Kirk Cousins, I believe, is probably outside the top 12 streaming quarterbacks this week, given the Chargers defense. You'd like to see Drake London and Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney likely back, we would assume, from injury after missing the week before. They had a bye week. The Falcons are the front runners to win the NFC South. And yet I have zero faith that they're actually going to look like a good team, a division-winning team on a week-to-week basis. Is there any sort of confidence you have in this Falcons offense, not even this week, but rest of season, operating the way they should with the talent that they have?
The Falcons are a very specific team. And I called this in their last game against Denver. I said Denver would wipe the floor with them because Denver gets massive pressure quickly. That's Kirk Cousins' kryptonite. Teams that don't get pressure, this offense can cook because they have weapons all over the place. And Kirk Cousins gets in a rhythm. That's what he is, a rhythm-based quarterback. Denver, it was never going to happen. That explained the blowout. So in this game, look, the Chargers have been great on defense. And Khalil Mack is back and Joey Bosa is back, but neither seem like they're at full capacity. If they can't harass Kirk Cousins quickly, and I know the Chargers have a great pass defense. They played a 3 safety look a lot, but I think Drake London's going to be underneath beast after the catch. I think there's a game Kyle Pitts gets back involved. There are games where they've weaponized him. I don't think there's a great spot for Mooney because I really believe the Chargers will do a nice job with their zone, kind of limiting him to some underneath stuff. And that's really not how they want to use him. They want to get him after catch. And I don't think that happens here. But I think Pitts is sneaky this week. Obviously, you're starting with if you got him, but I do think he's a little sneakier than usual.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if I would say you're starting if you got him, like necessarily. Spoiler for those who watch the love-hate video that I do every Friday, typically gets posted. I record on Tuesday. I made the argument that I wouldn't mind Will Dissly over Kyle Pitts this week. And maybe if you're saying Kyle Pitts is going to be primed for a better spot, that's different. But Will Dissly pretty comfortably in the full point PPRs in that 8 range or 6 point range floor. Obviously can catch a touchdown every once in a while, gets a few more yardage. My whole argument was if Dobbins is out, the offense looks completely different and not in a positive way, at least for the win script for the Chargers, and they're going to have to pass the ball more. It can't be, I don't think it can be Quentin Johnston after the massively disappointing Monday night game. Palmer was locked up. It can't only be McConkey and Vidal. So I think Will Dissly kind of is one of those that I like over Kyle Pitts, but you're saying, don't worry, Kyle Pitts should be okay this week.
So Kyle Pitts has at least 55 yards in 4 of 6 games. That's a high floor. Now, he had 2 games where he lost. He was dealing with a hamstring injury. His snaps were cut down significantly, but in the last game before the bye, his snaps went back up to 75%. He was in the 50% range 3 straight games. So they had been weaponizing him with the bye and the fact he played 75%. To me, he's 100% now. I think that makes a difference.
All right, let's move over to an AFC North battle between the Steelers and Bengals. This one's in Cincinnati. The Bengals favored by 2.5. Of course, the Steelers coming off a disappointing loss last Thursday to the Browns in blustery and blistery conditions. 48-point over-under. Again, Vegas seems to indicate there's a lot of offense. I don't really know why. The Steelers don't want to win by offense, and the Bengals kind of just seem to give away the game to whoever they seem to play. So I sort of think this is going to be a little bit over or a little bit lower scoring over under. And I also think the Steelers are just going to win because they find ways to win these games. I know the Bengals offense is prolific. Where are you at with this contest?
I always say my favorite line is not my favorite. My second favorite fan sign, styles make fights. And Cincinnati is a very good run defense. I thought they were going to be horrible starting the season. They have been anything but that. But they can't stop the pass. And they can't get a pass rush outside of Trey Hendrickson, and it's not enough. They're not getting enough pressure because teams can roll away from him. And Hendrickson is not playing at his best level this year. So how do you attack them? Oh, you throw the ball. Well, George Pickens, whether it's Calvin Austin, Mike Williams hasn't been playing much. They can't stop the tight end. Steelers got a couple of them. They can pass the ball here. And Russell Wilson's not going to be under pressure. And we know he likes taking the moonshots, and against this defense, this could be fun. I think the Steelers have a real chance on offense, Joe.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Najee Harris part of things, he was actually, again, I'm spoiling the whole love-hate video. He was on my fade list this week because you look at the running backs, no teams on bye. He really is effectively outside the top 24. if you're not just going off volume. That is your favorite phrase. If I'm guessing volume is king, is Jim
That's
Coventry's
number one.
main one. Yes. And Najee Harris has gotten at least 20 touches in 3 of the past 4
Yeah.
games, 18 in the one that he didn't. He's getting enough volume, but if it's against this run defense and more importantly, the Steelers can win by passing the ball, then Najee Harris just by default gets phased out because Jalen Warren's more involved as a pass catcher in that scenario.
There's no doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt. Jalen Warren, like PPR, yeah, there's some definite utility for him, and he is coming on. He looks healthier now, and Harris usually plays more snaps, but no need to go over what you already said. So, yeah, Jalen Warren, PPR, you can roll with him.
T. Higgins back for the Bengals. Is Mike Gesicki now a drop candidate if you're in a 12-team league? Okay, that's where I'm at as well, too.
Yeah, he doesn't run those same routes when Higgins is on the field because they were more stretch the field, and they don't need him for that. And so now, yeah, basically Tanner Hudson is the one who's going to see more targets.
All right, let's move over to the Jacksonville Jaguars and Texans. This one's in Jacksonville. Houston fair by 4, over under at 43. Of course, the Texans coming off a surprising and disappointing loss last week to the Titans. You had Tony Pollard run wild. You had a missed field goal by Fairbairn that would have tied things up when they got down to the 29-yard line. The status of Trevor Lawrence probably is important in this case, and I say probably because Jacksonville is the odds-on favorite, at least right now, to be the number 1 overall pick. They've played bad for a reason. I don't really know why they would throw Trevor Lawrence out there. It seems to me that there's no real incentive or reason, but Lawrence evidently wants to go. We'll have to see what his stats ends up being coming off the bye week. If Lawrence plays, let's put it that way, if Lawrence plays, does this change anything for you? Does that make Jacksonville more fearsome? I mean, the Texans have underperformed this year, so it's certainly possible that a divisional battle, things happen. They're weird games like you've mentioned last week in particular. How do you see this one unfolding?
I hate to go down narrative street. I like to be objective when I can. But look, the Jaguars coming out of a bye, they have to be deflated. I can't see them coming out of this with fight. I think they're past that. I think they realize, I think they're thinking New Year's. What are we doing when the season's over? From a psychological standpoint, this team is defeated. And that's narrative. And I apologize, but I see it that way. The Texans, look, they're not playing great. But they got Will Anderson back last week. They got 8 sacks against Will Levis. That pass rush is going to cook up here. And you know that DeMeco Ryan's going to send the house against the Jaguars because the Texans stopped the run very well and the Jaguars can't run. So now what do you have left? So, yeah, I think Derek Stingley's going to be a lot of the time, on Jaguars. Brian Thomas might limit him a little bit. Thomas is a superstar, so you play him. But I think the Texans roll him here.
We don't know the status of Tank Bigsby, and this is the unfortunate part. We're doing the show Wednesday. Teams aren't really starting to practice until this week, but you have games tomorrow and Friday, so the status of things makes things a bit murky. You would assume off the bye week that a running back would theoretically be healthy. If Bigsby is not out there, and again, we don't really know, does ETN become viable as a flex or a running back too? I mean, it's the Texans defense. They're actually pretty good numerically against the run, but we just watched Tony Pollard go crazy last week from the Titans side of things.
Yeah, Tony Pollard's a great running back. He is and I said it before going into that game, play Pollard because when there's no Tyjae Spears, he gets extra work, and he's that running back. The more touches he gets, the more chances to break a long one, and he does. And he just does. He's a super running back and underappreciated. In Dallas that last year, I think he really was hurt. So, but this isn't the case here. ETN has been brutal, and I wish I had an answer for it because I don't. Detroit, tough defense, 12 for 27 on the ground, 3 catches, 6 yards. Minnesota, 11 for 44. I know those are tough run defenses, but there is nothing going. He's not getting volume. He's not getting explosiveness, and he's not getting blocking. And Houston might not be Detroit and Minnesota level good, but they're the next level. I don't see the possibility of a big game because ETN has shown us nothing to indicate that's down the pike. He hasn't had a great game all year. 11 for 68 against Buffalo. There was that. That was it.
The pass catching perspective, like he's better than Tank Bigsby, but especially if those two are splitting time, there's really just no way. I mean, it's going to go underreported among most disappointing players, given their draft spots. And I always answer that not related to injury. Jalen Waddle, typically outside of last week, typically is the guy that would be the first answer for that. But you could name a number of people. ETN isn't in that conversation per se, because Jacksonville's been so bad, but it really is tough that you're saying typically second, third, fourth round player is non-startable if and when he's healthy. on one of the league's worst teams. It's a very frustrating scenario to be in if you do have ETN. I see a lot of start sit questions. Again, a reminder to folks that right after this show is done, we're going to hit the end button, and then Jim's going to fire it right back up and get to more of these start sit stuff for not just, I mean, I guess people will ask about the Thursday and Friday games, but more specifically the Sunday games too. So any of those start sit questions, Jim will be set for those right after this show is done. Moving on with our previews. It's going to be an interesting one, and I think arguably more impactful than anyone would have anticipated for a Week 13 game between the Cardinals and Vikings. Vikings can't seem to lose, sitting at 9-2, found a way to beat the Bears despite giving up an onside kick that you would have thought should have been Chicago's win. Nope, that's the Bears doing Bears things. And Cardinals right now sitting at the top of the NFC West along with the Seahawks. Losing to the Seahawks last week makes things a little bit disappointing. I thought the Cardinals were a team, everyone does the good bad teams, right? That's kind of the phrase that you hear. They're on that level of good bad team, but it's just that they haven't been able to benefit from an easier schedule, and that's why you said 6-5. They're a good enough team. Do I think they would win in the playoffs? Likely no. But against the Vikings, with the way the Vikings have been playing, I'm kind of interested, at least in this offense for the Cardinals.
I do think the Cardinals offense should be fun here because last week, Seattle, look, Mike McDonald, the coach of Seattle, he traded for Ernest Jones, the linebacker, his third team in 4 months. But that was a catalyst because Ernest Jones is a great blitzer. And we know that McDonald wanted to send these exotic pressures, but Terrell Dodson, who they cut at linebacker, he wasn't capable of that. And that defense all of a sudden is a new unit. The last 2 weeks, Seattle's great. So Arizona, yes, they played terribly. They were just crushed by what is going to be a good defense. Minnesota's a great defense. So we get it, but they're a great run defense. They send a bunch of blitzes. They don't get pressure. But Kyler Murray, this is perfect for him because when they send those blitzes, he can run and he is going to break contain. Those quarterbacks for Minnesota are awful. This is exactly the styles make fights. Back to that one again, where I think Murray's in a perfect spot to get big yardage on the ground, to see busted covers in the secondary when he buys time. I think Minnesota's going to struggle with him.
You know, you called this last week. We're about to talk about the Colts and Patriots in just a second, but you had said Richardson's over on the rushing yard total against the Lions. Given the man defense they play, Richardson's able to run. That was one of those that I talked about in every other platform I did based off of your advice. It feels like we're saying, I'm going to go look at the number in a second, but the over on Kyler Murray's rushing total feels like it's in play as well, too, given the exotic blitzes. But Murray is really capable of not just diagnosing that, but making the shifty plays in the pocket to extend a pass, but more importantly in this case, even run out for 5, 6, 7 yards. Like that's, like you say, styles makes fight. Well, it's Kyler Murray that is specifically good at countering the punch that the Vikings could be throwing defensively.
Yeah, and we saw Caleb Williams do that last week for the Bears. Caleb Williams was moving quickly. He's not Kyler Murray level mobile, but we saw that when a quarterback is decisive in his movement when that rush is coming, Caleb Williams did very well. And in a way, in the second episode, he kind of shredded Minnesota. So it's kind of similar idea.
Yeah, I want to find that number real quick, but I would assume the way that typically it's set, it's like a 44, somewhere around that range, at least on our platforms and software. We don't have Kyler Murray right now. If it's, let's just say 51.5, I think that'd be kind of high, but I would take the over on the 51.5, or more importantly, the way I like to do these types of things is if you can get the over on the rush attempts. Oftentimes, even a kneel down would count as a rush attempt. And you think about that scenario where the Cardinals could be able to kneel the ball down. That's one of those to consider as well, too. So looking at Kyler's over on his rushing yards or rush attempts, I think makes sense. Offensively, Justin Jefferson for the Vikings shut down last week. Jordan Addison was insane. I would assume both guys are in play. It's more you're playing Jefferson if you have him. That he had a disappointing game is not anything to overreact towards in my mind. But now Jordan Addison, is that one of those that for a while he was kind of outside the flex fringe, or at least right on that range, and of course has this big game? You sometimes see teams be like, oh wait, I have this really good first round pick from a couple of years ago, I should get him the ball more, and then that just sort of snowballs. Is that a scenario you think, or is it more Jefferson was shut down by the Bears and therefore Addison had to be the guy? Not some sort of overacting from last week's game.
Yeah, the second part completely spot on, Joe. The Bears sold out to stop Jefferson. And basically what Minnesota did, they said, you know what? Like, differing what you said, yeah, we got these other guys. Hockenson over 100 yards. Addison for $160. Aaron Jones more involved. They just took everything else because it's like, all right, you want to bracket Jefferson? We got you. And they did. The Bears don't have enough pass rush to make them pay. And that's going to be a similar thing with Arizona. I don't think they're going to go to the same game plan. I think that they're going to play like most teams do. It's just, you can't commit too many bodies on Jefferson because you pay a price. So it goes back to being the Jefferson show, but it hasn't been a huge Jefferson show all year. He gets his 8 targets a game. He gets his 80-ish yards. So they are still spreading, and Addison is getting most games decent yardage, good touchdown producer, very good for them in that capacity. You're considering him a wide receiver 3 because there's downside. There are weeks they don't have to go to him.
That's true. The over-under for this game at 45, I would assume the over hits far more than I would the Steelers-Bengals, for example. That was at 48. I don't quite know how that goes. What I've been having a lot of success, and I post the big betting sheet on my Twitter, JB Fantasy Sports, every week, either 7-point or 10-point teasers, pushing the overs down and then betting the over. So in this case, 35 points between the Cardinals and Vikings. Now you have to find 3 or 4 that make sense, but we've had a lot of success all year long. And I think that's one of those that if you're looking to have some action for the Sunday games, I would point towards this total in particular, teasing it down and then taking the over because I feel confident there's offense on both sides. Let's talk about Colts Patriots.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the teaser, Thanksgiving tomorrow, I did a 7-point teaser, teased the Bears up to plus 17, got the Packers to plus 3.5, and then I got the Cowboys up to plus 3.5. So you're getting more than a field goal, and you're getting 7. I think the Bears cover anyway, but if you want to do the 7-point teaser, have a little fun on Thanksgiving, to me, that one works.
I like the Bears one in particular. That 17 points is like a massive one. And again, if you're to throw in some Sunday games as well too, if things work out well, you can always, I think, at least if you go to the correct places, you can sell on those a little bit early and likely get some money back too. So I like the teasers quite a bit. That's been a lot of success. A rivalry match from the 2000s, Colts versus Patriots, certainly doesn't have the same teeth as Peyton Manning and Tom Brady back in the day. Colts kind of need this one to stay at all relevant in the AFC playoff race. I don't think they really are going to be. They have a bye in week 14 as well too. And then the Patriots side of things, I was expecting a bit more offensively against the Dolphins. I don't know if that was a divisional thing like you've talked about in past weeks or if there's a bit of regression we're seeing from Drake May in particular. They had one defense touchdown, one junk time touchdown, and that was effectively it for that offense. Has Richardson turned a corner? Because it was a bad passing completion percentage last week again, but I feel like you read stuff and talk to Colts fans, they were far more excited about what that looked like as opposed to earlier this season for the Colts.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had such a low baseline before the benching that it doesn't take much to look better. Richardson was fine in that game. Yeah, he was fine. He had a couple drops in that game by receivers that didn't help him either. But still, the completion percentage is very problematic. I am not excited for the Colts because they have been down their center, Ryan Kelly, who's going to be back mid-December if it all works out. Their right guard, Will Freeze, has been out for about 4 weeks, and he'll be out the rest of the season. And their left tackle, Bernard Raymond, has had a knee injury. He's missed multiple games. And look, missing 3 linemen, it's crushed Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor's done nothing for fantasy in 3 weeks. It's the 3 linemen missing. It's not Jonathan Taylor. And it's going to keep hurting the overall offense. And New England, look, they got Christian Barmore back on their defensive line. It's a big boost for them. And they're playing better defensively. Not great, but they're good enough. And with 3 linemen down for the Colts, I think the Colts are going to have a very difficult time moving the ball against the Patriots. Patriots are good against the pass. And we know that Josh Downs probably is not playing, or it's a shoulder. He's considered week to week. And that's their best receiver. So I am not optimistic. I think that there's going to be not very many points scored in this game. And obviously you start Jonathan Taylor because he could break one at any time, but the downside's real.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That's the over-under that I think is kind of gross from a 42.5 perspective. You can probably tease it up. And if you're saying these two teams are going to combine for 50 points, I don't know. I mean, Gus Bradley's defense,
I think it's going to 29. I get this going 16-13.
Yeah. I mean, like Gus Bradley's defense is not very good, but like if it's to be good against something, it's a rookie quarterback that doesn't have a whole lot of skilled weapons, right? So like that's where the Colts defense could kind of sit on things a bit more. They can also take away the run game. That's one of the things that they're trying to be good at entering the year. And if you're also saying the Colts can't score, and oh, by the way, Josh Downs, I don't know, probably doesn't play this week as well too. One of the better weapons for the Colts. That's a big deal. So mentioning teasing down and taking the over on Cardinals Vikings might be able to go the other way for the Colts Patriots. Not that you ever want to be excited for the unders, but like you're saying, 16-13, that would clear the under even without going up to 50. Anything else that you want to talk about from this game?
On the Indy side, And I know what a nuisance Austin Hooper's been. He's just eating up targets, and you can't start him, but he's eating up valuable targets. Last week was a touchdown, but Hunter Henry still is a solid floor PPR play. Ramondre Stevenson, look, if he doesn't get volume, it's a problem. This game should be close, so he should get volume, but you start Stevens as a low-end running back too, but Hunter Henry might be the only other one here because, like you said, the Colts are a sneaky good defense. If they play a great offense, they're not going to do great. But if they play a limited offense, this is a good defense. They have enough. They play well together.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Let's go over to the Seahawks Jets. This one's in New York. Seahawks favored by 2. Now this over-under is very interesting at 41.5. There's been a news item on Breece Hall that he still isn't practicing today, and that it's unclear what his status is going to be. That's a little bit alarming because they're coming off a bye week from the Jets' perspective. Obviously, all the hullabaloo around Aaron Rodgers and whether he's going to play, is he going on injured reserve? Well, it sounds like at least for this week, Aaron Rodgers is playing. And if Breece Hall is out, you're saying they have to pass the ball even more. We'll first go to, I think, the more pertinent question. If Breece Hall does not play, and again, we're doing this on Wednesday, very little information. Does Braylon Allen immediately jump into running back 2 conversation, or are you still, given how bad this offense has been, kind of fading that?
I would think Braylon Allen is a power runner. I think there is something to be said for him being able to get some yardage if he is the lead guy. If that happens, I think he's going to get volume, and I think you have to play him. I just don't see him getting any less than 15 touches to 18 touches, and that volume's king in fantasy football. So I think you kind of got to roll with it if he plays. Hopefully Hall's fine. But this offense is just toxic with Aaron Rodgers, and it's just unexplainable. Garrett Wilson laid an egg in the last game before the bye after blowing up the previous game. Devontae Adams, if he didn't have that one sneaky touchdown against the Texans when the Texans were selling out to stop the chains and the first down, gets the touchdown. He hasn't done hardly anything. Devontae Adams is a real sketchy start. He's a wide receiver, hope for wide receiver 3, but really he's had games worse than that in 3 of the last 4.
Yeah, like I'm having a debate in a league. Do I play Devon Vele or do I play Devontae Adams? That's where we're at right now. And I think it's stubbornness is how I describe it. But I will get more angry at myself if Devontae Adams goes for 16 points on my bench and Vele gets 6, then reverse. Right. So when that happens, I'm literally just picking for my brain. Like I can't get angry at myself that Vele doesn't do well on the bench or whatever else. That's I'm playing Devontae Adams, but it is bleak right now. And the way that the media seems to be churning around this, it could get even bleaker if you are invested in Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall or Devontae Adams as the season progresses. The Seahawks side of things, Kenneth Walker is known around the league as one of the better running backs in the league. He isn't quite producing at the Saquon, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs level, but then again, nobody really is. So do you think Kenneth Walker is a guy that will help you win fantasy championships in the sense that he's going to have a pop-off game or 2 as it goes on? I mean, that's the key in my mind. The Seahawks, in order to continue to be in the NFC West playoff picture, have to keep relying on Kenneth Walker, and I'm just worried that they're not focusing on him quite enough.
The biggest issue I've seen, and I talked about in the preseason and a little bit during the season, Ryan Grubb's their coach. He's a college guy. College guys don't have to make adjustments. They roll out their game plan. Either their guys are better than their opponents or their scheme is better, and all they do is just roll up and down the field, and they don't make adjustments like all season. Well, in the NFL, you got to make adjustments in the first half of the first game. And I always said that's why very few college coaches have ever been successful taking over an NFL offense. Jimmy Johnson, and for one season, Chip Kelly, and there's very few others, and that number dies quick. And that's Ryan Grubb's problem. He has no idea how to adjust to what NFL defenses are doing. So that space they had in the first couple of weeks when it was new, well, that space isn't there anymore. Teams have understand how to their spacing is, and they've made it difficult for Kenneth Walker to find room to run. So that's been the problem. It's been a low, unless they're trailing and in garbage time, this offense has no flow to it. It's just some randomness. They're just pieced together plays. Nothing builds on each other. So this offense is so hit or miss. The one thing right now is Smith and Jigba's going to get a lot of targets.
Yeah, and you'd hope that DK Metcalf can kind of find the early emergence as well, too. But it almost feels like the Seahawks can't have both Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba be fantasy relevant. I don't know if that's the scheme. I don't know if that's Geno Smith. I mean, there's some limitations as a quarterback there, too. But those are 2 good receivers and Tyler Lockett. That it's really only one of these guys that goes off on a week-to-week basis is very frustrating for an offense that should be good. For what it's worth, there's a few places that I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of depth. I'm benching DK Metcalf. I think Sauce Gardner would be covering Metcalf in that instance.
but he's been bad this year. Sauce Gardner is playing. Cornerback play is weird, Joe. Cornerback play is not always sticky year to year. You get an occasional guy who does it, but Sauce Gardner looks like 60% of the player he's been in the past. It's
true.
quite incredible. But this is what I battle with, Joe. I battle with this, what I've seen for 12 weeks. And it's like, but I know who this guy is. But at this point, this year, it's like not who he is. I mean, remember there were years where Darius Slay was terrible. And the next year he'd come back and he'd be Superman. But we see this with a lot of cornerback play. And right now, that vaunted cornerback trio, I think they also took a hit when Robert Saleh got fired. I think that they are emotionally crushed because they played their hearts out for that man. So I think there's something with that as well, because this defense has not shown up since Saleh left.
Yeah, it's the mental part of this. And again, we're kind of just projecting a little bit, but if you as a defense are entering every game saying, I need to be completely perfect in order to win, which is what they had to do when Zach Wilson was the quarterback. You saw it last year. They damn near played perfect every single week. And if you are entering every single week with that standard, it's hard when that is turned off. Like you can't really just flip that switch back on. It's a really heavy switch to push up. And when you have Aaron Rodgers there and saying that he can win the games, and we have Devonta Adams, and now we have Alan Lazard, and we're going to be way better. Like the idea that entering with Zach Wilson, you as a defense have to be perfect, is significantly different than entering with Aaron Rodgers, even if their play, which a lot of people point out, and I think is very funny, is effectively similar over the past 12 or 13 weeks for the Jets. I don't know how that saga ends. I just know that from our perspective, our business, it's very frustrating fantasy-wise, because I think Aaron Rodgers should be getting them to be a little bit better, and they have not. So let's go to the last game of the early afternoon slate, and that's the Titans-Commanders. You and I, both of us, we'll pat ourselves on the back, have been calling the Commanders' offensive demise for some weeks now. I didn't think it was going to occur against the Cowboys to the extent that it did, but if you're able to shut down Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler in that rushing attack, and you're just putting a safety over the top of Terry McLaurin, lo and behold, it's taken away, except for the one time there was a safety over and no one knew how to tackle. And McLaurin ends up getting a fine fantasy day out of that crazy sequence of the last 6 minutes of that Cowboys-Commanders game. I want to think it was like 34 points or 35 points, something like that. Over
41
that
points in the last 8 minutes of the game.
Crazy.
The last 8 minutes, not even just fourth quarter, the last 8:02.
That is absolutely crazy. So looking at this, and the Titans, who again pulled up a surprising win over the Texans last week, is the demise of the Commanders' offense going to continue, or is there a point where Cliff Kingsbury actually has to make an adjustment?
Cliff Kingsbury can't make an adjustment. No offense. He didn't do it in Arizona. He ain't doing it here. It's a very basic scheme. He found something that worked for a while. Film gets out. Teams get to play it. But here we go, Joe. Brian Robinson played like 15% of stuff. He had an injury, and then
I don't think he's playing this week.
Because they're already talking about bringing up Chris Rodriguez, which means, and then Eckler on the last kickoff of the game was concussed, second concussion of the year.
Yeah, he's out. Might be IR stint.
Right? So right now, we're looking at a backfield of Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez. If you're playing fantasy, don't be surprised if Chris Rodriguez is the lead. It's like that Kamani Vidal thing you said. He will likely be seeing more work than McNichols, but they'll both. But here's the thing. The Titans are good against the run. This is not going to be a great game for them. It's a horrible matchup. And then if we're going to see Jaden Daniels back in these obvious passing situations, and there's a safety over the top, it's going to get scary. So I am very concerned for the Commanders without those running backs. That running back, it runs the whole engine for them.
Yeah, the 5.5 spread that's the Commanders are favored by right now is interesting, because you think the Commanders are a touchdown favor better than the Titans. The Titans have been bad all season long. The Commanders' defense is okay. Of course, they traded for Marshawn Lattimore. I guess I don't know if I've seen him really pop off yet as well for the Commanders. But the Will Levis side of things, like, he's so liable to make one dumb play that either gives the team 3, 7, 10 points, whatever it might be, that it's hard to say the Titans are going to win and the Commanders are going to lose. But fantasy-wise, it's a frustrating spot, especially if you have Terry McLaurin, who's been a really consistent and reliable option. Yeah, he got points last week. It's not a fluky play. Does that keep happening even against the dregs of the NFL like the Titans? I don't really know. Commanders have a Week 14 bye. I was saying last week already, I would be trying to trade Terry McLaurin, if for nothing else, getting a player that can stay for the next 2 weeks that's not on a bye. But also, I think we're seeing a bit more of the roller coaster come down with this offense. We're not talking about the Christmas Day. We're not talking about the Thanksgiving and Black Friday games per se, but the waiver wire show Tuesday that Jake Latarski and I did, we talked about the Chargers running backs. We talked about the Commanders running backs. Again, you mentioned Chris Rodriguez. Everyone's going to be directed towards Jeremy McNichols. And Maybe this matchup is the pass catcher, it makes sense. Then there's the Raiders guys. And if you assume Alexander Madison and Zamir White do not play again, there's Amir Abdullah in that mix. So of that group, let's just say Vidal, Gus Edwards, Abdullah, and the Commanders running backs, is there one that you like more than the other if you have to play a streaming running back this week?
I mean, Abdullah caught 5 passes last week. He's a real part of the pass game. The Chiefs are going to get Charles Omenihu back, who is a great pass rusher for them. Had 7.5 sacks in limited action last year, and that's going to help the passers with Chris Jones. So dumping the ball off is going to be a big part of that game because they're not going to probably have success running. Chiefs are not as good against the run as they had been, but the Raiders can't run at all. So I think Abdullah is going to get a lot of work in the receiving game. If they get in the red zone, we've seen it all year. They've used them multiple times in the red zone. I'd play Abdullah.
Okay, I'm with you on that one. That was my recommendation over that group, and it's assuming that Zamir White and Alexander Madison don't play. They were doubtful on last Friday. It's a short week. I would assume they don't, but I guess we'll find out their status probably today or at least tomorrow when those injury reports are released. All right, moving to the late afternoon games. It's a divisional matchup that adds a bit more intrigue than past weeks. Buccaneers traveling to Carolina. Buccaneers favored by 6. Of course, Panthers played competitive against the Chiefs. That's a opposite conference battle between a Chiefs team that was favored by 12 points. That happens. It shouldn't. I think everyone's going to assume that Patrick Mahomes and company are going to be great and steamroll teams. You're the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. You're playing against the Panthers team that's been awful all season long. I'm not surprised that they laid an egg. I'm more frustrated they didn't just call the coverage to Panther altogether, but I'm not surprised by that outcome. This is a divisional game. Buccaneers need to win and keep winning to keep pace with the Falcons trying to make up that 2-game deficit that they already have, plus the tiebreaker to the Falcons. I think the Panthers just kind of roll over and get destroyed by the Buccaneers, and the Bryce Young resurgence, which it has been. I want to be completely clear. Bryce Young's been impressive. It ends this week, even though the Buccaneers' pass defense has been bad all season.
Yeah, we know the MO with the Buccaneers defense. Todd Bowles going to send the blitz. And the offensive line's been good, very good actually for the Panthers. But when they send that extra pressure, it's going to speed Bryce Young up. And I will say last week, the Chiefs with injuries at cornerback, they're not covering well right now. Well, now in this game, the Buccaneers might not be great at covering, but they're going to send more pressure than the Chiefs did. So now the quick, passing is going to have to happen, and that's going to lead Bryce Young to some mistakes. So I am not optimistic here. The running game for the Panthers is decent with Chuba Hubbard and is a little bit above average, slightly above average in my eyes, run defense. I think Hubbard's still going to be okay for fantasy, but yeah, I think Bryce Young's going to make some mistakes here. It's not going to be what he did last week for sure.
You're playing Chuba Hubbard over Najee Harris, I would imagine, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then would you play Chuba Hubbard, this is a Thursday game, but over DeAndre Swift against the Lions?
You know what? I would because the Lions are a great run defense, and I don't think Swift has much upside here.
I don't like to do the I told you so's very often, but how you guys doing who drafted Jonathan Brooks? I heard from everyone how great Jonathan Brooks was going to be, and that was a fantastic 8th or 9th round pick. And, oh, wait, he doesn't play 4 weeks. And, oh, wow, he's not playing 8 weeks. And, well, surely when he gets activated, he's going to be really good. Still hasn't happened. You might be waiting a long time. I hope you haven't been holding your breath for Jonathan Brooks to be fantastic. It's because Chuba Hubbard is really good, but also he seems to be the heart and soul of that offense and the culture they want to set. It might not be about draft pedigree, guys. You don't have to be in your checkbooks or whatever looking at that stuff. It's about what matters on the football field. And I think Chuba Hubbard has proven that to be the case for that Panthers offense. Otherwise, Buccaneers-wise, you're playing Mike Evans. You're playing, I think, Rashad White and Bucky Irving, but Bucky Irving especially. I want both of those Buccaneers backs in my lineups if I can.
Bucky Irving, although last week, finally, he played more snaps than Rashad White. He has been the better back. I don't think it's close. They're both good. They both will produce, but Bucky Irving's like a really good deal here. But you're playing them both. Yes, they're both going to get volume in this game. The Buccaneers should have a lead for much of it. They can lean on that. This Buccaneers offense is so impressive this year. Baker Mayfield getting the most out of everybody. Liam Cohen just really coaching it up. No, they were periods without Godwin, who will be out the rest of the season, periods without Mike Evans. They still did well. They had one bad game. But yeah, they're just going to, this offense should roll here again.
It's so impressive. I'm glad you mentioned that. I thought the Buccaneers would be a one-hit wonder from last year, and I thought their offensive coordinator now in Tennessee, that was going to be the reason why they can't be successful. And certainly after Godwin gets out, well, then there's no way. And when Mike Evans too, I mean, they adjusted to make Kate Otten a fantasy relevant guy, and he's still That's the opposite of the Cliff Kingsbury offense, where I feel like each and every week there's an adjustment other than Baker Mayfield is awesome. Buccaneers have been killing it. So really impressed with them. And I want them to make the playoffs, if only to reward what is a good offense relative to what we've seen from the Falcons this season, which has been inconsistent. Going to the Rams and Saints, you might not know about this as a rivalry game, but the Rams fans and Saints fans more in particular definitely know this one, of course. The blown call, it was a blown call. Rams fans, stop talking about it as if it was the right thing. A blown call allows the Rams to go to the Super Bowl, get trounced by the Patriots, as it should be, because the refs should not be deciding games. NFL, stop doing that. This one also doesn't have a lot of teeth, kind of like the 2000s rivalry with the Patriots and Colts, because Saints are not very good. Now, there is the report today that, or I guess yesterday, new or interim head coach for the Saints wants to continue using Taysom Hill the way they have been using him for the past couple of weeks. That makes sense. They've been winning games I didn't think they would win against the Falcons, but even against the Browns too. The Rams defense is arguably one of the worst in the league. They've been trending downward now for quite a while. They get pass rush, but is anyone stopping the Taysom Hill train? That's what I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, you know what? I think the Rams have kind of run into a little schedule like quirk where they played teams they didn't match up well with, especially last week against Philly. They never had a chance against them. Mm-hmm. But I do think that pass rush is real. And I do think that, look, the Saints are a limited offense. Marquez Valdes-Scantling's not going to catch a deep touchdown every week or two every week. It's not going to happen every week. Alvin Kamara's been playing fine, but teams are just putting six defensive linemen up and just taking away the run lanes, and he's been slowed down. There's not much you need to take away. And then once they're in obvious passing situations, the beauty of the Rams pass rush is that they have pass rushers across the board, which means they can't slide protection to one guy. So I think Derek Carr is going to be under immense pressure because of that. If it's just one pass rusher, they boot him out, they use play action, and he's okay. I don't think that works here. I think the Saints offense is in a lot of trouble in this game.
Yeah, I do too. For a third consecutive time, I'm picking the team playing the Saints to completely annihilate the Saints. I've been wrong the first two times. We'll see if it happens the third time, but I think the Rams offense is going to be totally fine. There isn't a whole lot to talk about other than you're playing Cooper Kupp and Nakua, and you're playing Kyren Williams. Stafford, I guess, is the question mark. He's in the fringe of quarterback one conversation. In my mind, I think I am playing him. I think he is like quarterback 10 or 11. Where did he end up in your rankings?
Yeah, this is a good Stafford week. The reason we say that is when Stafford is under pressure, he is in a lot of trouble. You can see he's got that thing where he doesn't want to get hit. He's getting it out quick. He used to be a guy who stood in there and took the big hits. He doesn't want that anymore. The Saints are not getting pass rush, and this should be a game where he's kept very clean. Also, the Saints team doesn't stop the run. So I think this is a game where the Rams put up some serious points because the styles make fights. This is one the Saints don't have anything to counter what the Rams do best.
Right. Well, to be fair, I would have said that certainly for the Browns. I thought that was another styles meets fight scenario where the Browns could be good. Not so much the Falcons, and that was a rivalry game, whatever else. But
rivalry. But the Browns game, Joe, and I was saying this, the Browns all year have been busting coverages. And how do they get big plays?
Right.
They rolled them out, which, again, because is really at this point just Myles Garrett. Nobody else is really like breaking the house. They trade away Zadarius Smith. So it was one of those things where, the rollouts and the play action and then the busted coverages. So that actually ended up being favorable.
Yeah. All right. So the gift of the NFL scheduling for Week 13 is these next two games. No, I'm saying it as a serious thing because it really is great.
I know.
Eagles going to Baltimore. Baltimore right now favored by 3. The over/under at 51.5. I mean, like, there isn't a whole lot of fantasy conversation because all your studs you're effectively playing, like the Mark Andrews of the world, Derrick Henry's, the Mars, Jalen Hurts's. We'll have to see the stats. Devonta Smith. That one kind of felt like it crept out of nowhere that he wasn't playing last week. And I felt a little bit like you were saying earlier, the Eagles sort of knew, I don't think it really matters if Devonta Smith plays this week or not. We're going to kind of beat the Rams no matter what. I would imagine you want to have him out there because this is a scenario where the Eagles, if they're to win, I think have to win by passing the ball, right?
So in theory, yes. But here's the problem. Roquan Smith didn't play on Monday. He injured a hamstring. I'm not a doctor. I'm not in the room. But if he missed one game with a hamstring, he's probably missing 2. And if Roquan Smith, we saw J.K. Dobbins tearing it up.
Yes.
That's J.K. Dobbins. He's a nice back. He's no Saquon Barkley. And that offensive line, it's no Philadelphia Eagles. If Roquan Smith is out, don't be surprised if Barkley goes for $150. Don't be surprised because without Roquan Smith, and they trade away Patrick Queen last year in free agency, lost Patrick Queen. Without Roquan Smith, it's a completely different run defense. And that offensive line of the Eagles to get after. Now, A.J. Brown, he doesn't get enough targets because they're a run-based team right now, and that's been crushing him. But on his 8 targets or so, he gets you 100 yards. And this is a team in the Ravens, they can't stop downfield passing. And A.J. Brown, good luck slowing him down. Now, again, the targets are going to be lower than we'd like, but A.J. Brown gets it done. But anybody else, no. Look, it's a good matchup for Goddard, but if Barkley gets going, there's not many targets for him. Like you said, Devontae Smith, often not many targets for him. It's basically it's the triplets.
Right.
It's Barkley, and it's AJ.
On the other side of things, I mean, the Eagles' defense has played significantly better, but it's also true in saying they haven't faced a real opponent like this. And Lamar's going to present a unique defensive issue every single team he faces. But I kind of think that the secondary, which has been so good with those 2 rookies, Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell, you can have Lamar kind of make a secondary that's so young be put in a difficult spot because Lamar just does Lamar things. And the way he's been playing this year, it seems like he can't make a bad decision. I mean, he's been on fire all year. He's on route, I think, to win a 3rd straight MVP or third MVP of his career. He's been fantastic. This might be literally who has the ball last wins the game, because I don't know if either defense stops these offenses right now.
It's funny you say that because I call the game 31-30. That's how I'm on this thing, which that's not a lot of times. I have the Eagles winning, but it could be the Ravens 31. It could be either way on that one. Right. So, yeah, if I'm getting 2.5 points, which I am with the Eagles, I'm taking 2.5 because I think it's going to probably be that close. And like you said, they both should be able to move the ball. The Ravens, it's going to be interesting because the Eagles, like you said, they are a legit defense. They're super well coached by Vic Fangio. And Fangio is going to have some kind of a fun game plan here. That he will have some things that the Ravens haven't seen. But like you said, ultimately, Derrick Henry, too. It depends how much they want to commit to him. The Eagles' defense has been good against the run, but we saw Derrick Henry can exert his will. Not every game you use him because some matchups don't work. But I do think they can get to this great run defense because I don't think it's a big and powerful defense. I think it's more one that's relying on a couple key players, and I think Henry can get going.
Yeah, it's just Lamar is unique to any other quarterback and any other player in the NFL. Derrick Henry is unique to any other player and any other running back in the NFL. When you have 2 of those players each and every week playing at their best, not really injured or whatever else, like you could have a really good defensive line. You could have a Jordan Davis who's kind of a unique body type one of defense tackles, and the way that Carter's been playing too. That's all great, but you don't go against Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson every single week. You don't see him in practice. You can't plan for that. So like that, the way the Ravens offense have been playing, again, Lamar Jackson making smart decisions, and I think the scheme for Todd Monken really accentuating both of their strengths. That's where this Ravens offense has gotten to the point where it has been easily one of the best in the league, and I think one of the more fun ones. That's a late afternoon game. Then we're going to get a rehash of what appears to be Blizzard 2.0 for the Bills game. I'm not sure if you've seen the weather for this yet or if I just got by the Twitter stuff, but I think there's going to be a lot happening here Sunday night.
Yeah, this is important. My friend Dennis Michelson, you find him at DMike, M-I-C Media on the X. He's a legit meteorologist, 3 or more decades doing this. He always feeds me information. He's a fantasy football guy as well. And, of course, the weather can change. But as of right now, this is what Dennis said. Not as bad as last year's Snowmageddon, but a decent lake effect event for Buffalo for his weekend's game. It won't close down the city or get the game to move, but he think like the same weather we saw in the second half of Cleveland, Pittsburgh on the Thursday night. Think that for the entire game.
Wild. So not that it will be so bad that they have to move the game, but just bad enough where they have to play in ridiculous conditions. And oh, by the way, it might be without Brock Purdy. We'll have to see. I don't ever trust the Niners anymore. And if you tuned in at all to the Waiver Wire podcast towards the end, I went on about a 5-minute rant, which was pretty scalding for at least what I do among the media content that I do. I am so ticked off with how we, you and me, anybody else in the fantasy industry, have to deal with the stupid crap that the Niners put us through every single week. And I don't believe for a second that Brock Purdy is playing this week. You can't tell me that a guy who couldn't throw the ball more than 5 yards in practice Thursday, that was part of scheduled maintenance, that does not play Sunday. That is a load of crap. And I'm sick of it, whether it be Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch. They did this with Christian McCaffrey, the pneumonia stuff with Deebo Samuel. It's been an issue all year, but the Niners have been the massive team in it. And I hope they get absolutely spanked and cry in the snow, because, God, I'm hating the Niners right now.
Well, I don't know how to outdo that rant, but obviously any type of weather. And everybody, you need to check this forecast throughout the weekend. And I'll be doing a start sit show, doing right after this show. So if you got questions, you've been asking them, you got, when we're done, I'm going to do that specifically. But Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern, of the latest update that we can get. It's a night game, and we may have more about the weather. But as of right now, look, the 49ers, Debo isn't running like he used to. Christian McCaffrey's not. And if you're going to talk a snow field, I don't know how even Kittle gets going on this. I don't think the 49ers are. Trent Williams missed last week. That's huge. If he's out again, that's massive. So it's very problematic. And I don't know how the 49ers, how many points are going to be scoring here. Cross-country road trip, playing in a tough venue. And look, Bills are playing for that number 1 seed as best they can, trying to catch up with the Chiefs. They have the tiebreaker. So, and they're used to playing in these elements. So there's a huge advantage for the Bills.
Yeah, Juwan Jennings has been a guy that I liked quite a bit. I think at this point with the weather and if Purdy plays or if he doesn't play, he's outside of my flex wide receiver 3 range. I would rather play a few of these other ones instead. One more game here, because again, we're talking about this weather-related stuff. It's a Wednesday. It's going to be impacting things Sunday. You doing your 11 a.m. Eastern show on this very station will have a better job at doing that and analyzing what's going to happen from the Niners-Bills perspective. So we'll go to that game more defaulted to Sunday. Last one, Monday night, Browns traveling to Denver. Bo Nix has been playing way better than everyone has thought. And the Browns did get that Thursday win over the Steelers in blustery conditions. I just want to say, Bo Nix has done this against the Panthers, the Saints, the Falcons, I think, in that range. The Ravens predictably made Bo Nix look bad, and then Bo Nix in a divisional game against the Chiefs played very well. That's the one that I'm going to give him credit for. I refuse to make the same mistake that we did Mac Jones' rookie year, where we acted like Mac Jones was the saving grace of all quarterbacks, and then is cut 2 years later and is a backup for Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. I'm not saying Bo Nix is that bad, but let's not overreact that much on Bo Nix when he's been bouncing on cupcake teams this season.
You're right. Sean Payton has done a great job coaching. He set it up so they have multiple options to throw. He basically nixes to be a point guard, get it out quickly. The offensive line's good. They invested in that offensive line. The running game has scuffled because the line, surprisingly, it was actually built to be a run blocking line. They appear to be better blocking the pass and the run because they're not getting any type of push consistently. But look, the Browns, they have a good run defense. So I don't know if the run game gets going this week either. But the Browns, we talk about their corners. We talk about their passers. We talked about earlier in the show. They're not playing well. They are busting coverages right and left. And Sean Payton, with film on this team, he is going to have a plan to attack them. And I do think they can move the ball on this team, especially playing at home. Playing in the Mile High City, it's going to be huge for them. And it's not going to be a big offensive game. But remember, this all starts with the Broncos defense. Jameis Winston playing this unit in Denver. And I know they played Pittsburgh, but again, the divisional game thing, those are wacky. I don't know how much they're moving the ball in this game on the Cleveland side. So Denver may not have to do a lot offensively to win this, but they should have some short fields to work with too. I think Jameis throws a couple picks in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Broncos fair by 5.5, over under 42 points. I think the Broncos win. I like the money line side of things a bit more than the spread. The Browns won their Super Bowl last week. I mean, to beat the Steelers in the conditions that they did, that's an emotional high, and we can talk about narrative stuff for it, but we're just people here. They won the game that really mattered to them last week, and they probably won't be as ready to come up for this game against the Broncos. They're effectively out of the playoffs. They're really not playing for anything else. To upset things in the division is far more different than beating a Broncos team that, while I think they aren't that good, are still playing at a level that seems to be better than the Browns have been all season long. So I'm with you on that. I like the money line more from the Browns perspective. That does about it for us on the Wednesday show. Of course, Jim, right after this is going to get you more set for this. Yeah. With start sit stuff. I see a lot of stuff from Tyler or a few other folks in the channel themselves. Jim's going to get you set with all the start sit questions right after this show concludes. But this is my last time to talk to you guys. Thanks all season long for listening to us. Obviously, one more week of the regular season after this week, 6 teams on bye. Bye again, part 2. That'll be fun. The Waiver Wire show next week. We'll have you covered for that. Jim is going to be on the Waiver Wire show the week after, getting us set for first week of the playoffs. Looking forward to that as well, too. So it's been awesome to do this stuff with you all year long, Jim. From a holiday perspective, I always kind of get grounded back into, I'm so thankful to do this job and to work with people like you. And I know that you don't get enough credit. So I want to give you as much credit as I can for all the different grinding that you do throughout the year, all the different people that you're helping out. Thank you so much to being a fun partner to work with. And thank you guys, the listeners, to watching and helping out. So I'm not going to let you end with that. I get to say the nice things, Jim. You can find another time. We're going to end the show right there. Sorry. No.
And I'll be back in 4 minutes. So those who are sitting here, I need 4 minutes before I start the next show.
All right, guys. Thanks everyone for listening.